There's no doubt service design is gaining more and more importance every day. It supports products and it increases the customer value. To hear more about the future of service design, I'd like to introduce Strategic and Innovation Manager for DesignIt, Humberto Matas.
Good afternoon. So, the first thing that I was wondering if I should be talking about service design in a UX conference. Are these two things the same thing? If I say that, it's a tricky question, because if I say that they're the same thing, probably service designers and practitioners and academia would get very mad. And if I say they're two totally different things, probably UX designers who understand their profession in a more holistic way would also get mad. So I will leave the answer to you. What I can say is that when it comes to the actual pragmatic daily activity of UX, you can see that usually it's more about digital, it's more confined in the digital space, and also usually, not always, but usually it's about designing isolated touch points, or maybe combine 2 or 3 touch points, but not with a holistic perspective. And that is what I think service design brings to the table. Just a holistic approach where physical and digital worlds get together. It's more natural to do architecture, like real architecture, like spaces, when you're doing service design than when you're doing UX, okay? But if you're thinking about the omni-channel and all this stuff, you need to be doing both at the same time, right? Also with service design, what usually happens is that because you're having this holistic approach, you start transforming the business. You start having conversation and having thoughts about what new business opportunities are here. And that's something that with UX many times doesn't happen. Having said that, another disclaimer about the future. I don't know anything about the future. I cannot tell you what's going to happen with service design or with any other thing, especially in these times where everything is changing so fast. What I can tell you, and what I will try to do today, is that you cannot no longer plan, you have to be prepared. I like to think of this as a martial arts, like people who are really, really standing, who are balanced, who know their moves, and who can react very fast and counterattack to what happens in the market, rather than big plans with bigger scenarios for the future, okay? So, with these disclaimers, let's start into what trends, what do I see that might influence service design in the future? The first thing is that it should get away from service. And it might sound counterintuitive, but the truth is that many, many times when people think about service, they think about the thing that comes after people purchases my product or buys my insurance or opens a bank account. It's more about customer care than the real service. And this is no longer true. The product is the experience, especially in the service area. If you think about an insurance, these companies, I don't know if any of you work in that industry or banking, how these companies are organized. There's people defining products, which is nothing less than a bunch of points of what covers my insurance and a price. And then there's another people in the company who's taking care of how this thing is delivered and served to the client. Well, these things, in reality, from a customer perspective, these two things are together. The experience is the product, it's the same thing. We cannot separate them. The second trend that I think will influence service design is actually tangible products. It's what are we going to do with products? Most of the manufacturers of products, they understand that an isolated product is not valuable anymore, or at least it doesn't have the value it used to be. It needs an ecosystem of services around it. And this ecosystem gets so complex that if you don't have designers working with it, it's going to be really messy. This is a very old example from a pill case that have an RFID in the lid to know if you open it, and then if your dad or your mom takes the pill, and if they don't do, you have something on the wall that starts blinking, and if you still don't do anything, then it starts making a sound, and if you still don't do anything, it starts sending emails to your family and to your doctors. Can you imagine how messy that is? What level of detail you have to put into this to understand what should be put in an email that is sent to my son or to my family if I'm not taking a pill? What are you going to say? Are you going to tell on your dad? Are you going to tell him that he's dying? Okay, so this is really, really, really complicated, and it requires a whole discipline to take care of it. When designers comes into play, beautiful thing happens. Not only aesthetically, but beautiful things in terms of interaction, in terms of how to deal with the client, how to process the information, how to present the information to the client. Something as ugly as a thermostat, something as non-cool as a thermostat has become the icon for the new service design area. Or it can also be with pets. We did this project like a year ago, wearable for pets. That's a crazy world out there, but it also happens that you have to take into account how do you create this new relationship between your pets and the people. And this is just going to increase, okay? Because wearables are not just a thing that's fashionable. It's a need for the companies because the companies are constantly seeking top of mind. In a world where every single project in every single company is an app, what do we have to do? An app. Well, we have this problem, do an app. Well, if you have that, and there's thousands of apps in your mobiles, what you need is to be top of mind. You need to be somewhere where your client realizes you're there. So it's a watch, it's something in your shirt, it's something in your shoes, something, I mean, it's easier to leave your house without an app downloaded than without a shoe, right? You'll notice that you don't have a shoe with you. But that's the logic. So these things are going to be more and more important and increasing. So all these ecosystems, they really need to be designed. Another thing that service design is going to do, is going to help us do, is connect the dots, is sew. If you think of these guys, these are Samis people. It's I don't know how, people. It's not a race, it's a tribe that lives in Laponia, between Finland and Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. And these guys, the idea they have of borders. A border is what you draw with your sledge, when you're going in the snow. So the line that's behind you, that's a border. It means that it goes with you, wherever you are, the border is, it disappears, it fades away, and it's constantly moving, okay? So that's more likely, by the way, this is very interesting because they were asked, what country do you want to belong to? Norway, Sweden, Finland, and they were like, we don't even understand what you're talking about. Okay? Our concept of borders is not that. Is this moving border. And this is interesting because that's what's happening in every single industry today. The borders are moving, the lines are getting faster. You don't know where your service starts and where the other ends. This is a public train company in Germany. They created Flinkster, which is a car sharing company, because they understood the job of their customers was to get to a destination, not to be in a train. The train was just a mean. Okay, so they thought of themselves, we're not moving trains from one place to another, we're moving people, and there's this last mile that they cannot do with us, so why don't we provide them with a car? It's a very simple thought, and it looks like it makes a lot of sense. But then you need to design the service in a way that is seamless, that you're changing from a car to a train, and if you're really giving a value to me, then it has to be seamless. And that's where service design is also very important. Again, it's physical, it's digital together, but to create a great experience. And this is, some industries are just thinking about going beyond their natural borders because they're willing to serve better their clients. But some other are because they're just pushed. These are we had the simple representative this morning. And these are the guys who created Simple. Are these bankers? Are these the people you would expect? If you ask a banker who's going to disrupt your business, would they think about these kind of people? No, because there's constantly new players, and you don't know exactly where you're being hit. Think of banks. If a bank is about giving you money and about giving you access to cash and about giving you credit, what happens when I don't need the cash and I can get credit somewhere else? Then what's a bank? So you need to go beyond your industry, beyond your business. And why is this a service design or even a UX task, and not only an innovation task? Because at the end of the day, what companies are trying to do is they're trying to own the client relationship. What you saw there with Nest is just a strategy to get between the utilities companies and the client. I'm trying to get in that thin layer, it's the last mile, but I'm getting the relationship with the client, and that is completely about service design and about UX. If you do that right, then you can deliver a better service, and even you can start subcontracting what you think now is your core business. We will see telco companies subcontracting their core business. We will see banks subcontracting their core business, but keeping the client relationship and trying to make money out of it. This is an example. I don't know exactly how successful it is, but I like the concept. It's a credit card that goes on top of your credit cards. So it decides which credit card you're going to use to pay, depending on discounts or better conditions, whatever. The important thing is that you no longer talk to Visa or MasterCard, you talk to them. And once that happens, then there's a whole new world of opportunities there. Also, something very important with all this technology and all these new trends going on is about meaning. And this is where I think probably UX and service design differ more. We need to create meaningful experience. It's not just about creating something that can be done because technology allows it. It's not just an engineer-driven approach to it. It's because I can do it, I will do it. It's what is really meaningful. Why am I adding any value to the group of people I'm trying to serve? And of course, you could argue that this is a task for the market to decide, that the consumers would decide if it's valuable. But if you've been around the last 10 years, you will have realized that the markets are not the smartest thing when it comes to decide about value. So maybe it helps that while you are designing it, you put something into it, you put some meaning. Then the market will decide, but at least you're worried about that. And this is, I said this is probably the most different part from service design and UX, because service design is something born in Europe. It's something that British claim and Italians claim and some Germans claim, but it's something definitely born in Europe around 20 years ago. And I don't know if it means anything, but if it does, sometimes the European approach to things is more humanistic. It has something in it that can add that meaning, that value. I'm not sure about this. This is more a desire than a real truth. But when I work with my teams and when we do all the research and try to bring the insights to the projects, we try to bring this into play. We try to talk to the clients and talk about meaning, have the conversation. This is not just pure selling, pure numbers. It's what are we trying to do here? Are we going to be good? Are we going to harm people? Are we not? Then, of course, there's always higher values that decides, but at least we can have the conversation. And this is very contextual to me, but another trend or another area where I think service design is going to be very impactful is in designing what's public. I come from Spain. I come from a country that has been devastated not only by the crisis, but mainly by the trust in institutions. The institutions have failed big time. Like, there's no trust in politicians, in government. So how do you rebuild that? Is that a task for designers? Why not? We're working with some public institutions talking about funds, pension funds, how do we treat the retired people. And when you bring service design into the picture, and not purely just an interface design, but something bigger, then again, you have really more interesting conversation that actually informs the real projects and ends up in a better experience. And I think that's something to take into considerations. This is a small project we did like 2 years ago in Norway to reduce the time that women were waiting to get the diagnosed, to know if they had breast cancer or not. It took 3 months to know. 3 months. Can you imagine waiting for 3 months to know if you have cancer? And it took 3 months, and you were not considered a patient, because until you're not diagnosed with cancer, you're not a client of the hospital. You're someone from the outside, because you're not sick. So it was uncertain, and the experience was really awful. With no technology, just changing the service, changing the way that the teams related to each other, some of the protocols and the process, we reduced that to 3 days. And we help the teams, the nurses and the hospital, consider everyone entering the door as a customer, as a patient, so they will be treated nicely from the beginning. Okay? These are small things that really make a big difference in the public sphere. 2 more things to finish. Continuing this line of activism, of public space. There's a very interesting thing there. When we're talking about institutions, corporations, that they need to regain trust in the public, that they need to re-engage with their stakeholders, there's a lot to do with what's happening in the NGO activist world. What can we learn from that? When you look into those spaces in social entrepreneurship, you look into those spaces, there's a lot of breaking down walls. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of generosity in the way they work. And when you bring that back to the corporations, this means that service design can help corporations do a creative transformation, which is really, really what they need. Because to deliver, this is something someone said once, I can't recall where I read it. To deliver a great UX, first you have to build a great corporation, a great company. So it's what emerges from a company. It's the interface that you have. You cannot fake it forever. So you really need to change who you are. The big companies that are claiming to put the client in the center and have a 360 approach, but they work silo-wise, which is most of them, and the incentives are in silos, and they cannot cross-collaborate. They cannot sit together to think together. They only sit together to report to each other. These people will never be able to build a really differentiating user experience. It will always be hitting the client from many different angles, like treating the client like if he was 4 different clients for each part of the company. So what service design can do, and this here, UX, I think they share a lot of tools and methods to do that, is to bring people together to think and to have the conversations and to create things together. And that really makes a big difference on the kind of experience you can deliver at the end. Sorry. Went back. And just to finish, something that is naturally happening is that when you're talking about these things, about pushing companies out of their boundaries, helping them go beyond their industry, transforming their business, and all these things from a designer's perspective, you have to talk business. You have to start understanding what kind of language is going to be accepted on the other side. If you have to convince people, you have to speak their language. You cannot just go with their design speech. It doesn't mean that you have to become a business consultant. It means that you need to be invited to their parties, at least. Not as the funny guy, but as someone as a peer that they could talk to. And finally, the future of service design is the future because one thing that you can say that service design and UX don't do very good is coming up with real innovations. They're good when it comes to create a new experience, solve things or connect things together, but they're not so powerful when you really need to break through with an innovation. But again, there's some things that can be done there. There's this company and there's other companies working with futurists, with future scenario planning. And what you do is you include the service design into that. So you can decide or you can project how will your future customer journey will be. What will happen if a scenario like this happens? How will you react? What kind of service will you deliver? And then it's helping you project in the future. And somehow, it's probably not the best discipline, but it helps you to also project the future. And finally, like everything that is important and interesting, it should disappear. It should disappear, meaning it should dilute. We shouldn't talk about it. It should be so natural to to have it when you're defining your new services and products, that it's not present to us anymore. It's just go there in the water. And this is what I can tell you about the future of service design. Thank you.